There was a man in ancient times who wasn't just rich. He was so rich that next to him, Elon Musk would look like an intern, and Jeff Bezos like the owner of a neighborhood grocery store. We're talking about a fortune not measured in billions, but in trillions of dollars, adjusted for inflation. The Bible says that Solomon received 666 talents of gold per year, just from passive taxes, just from allowance. If you convert that to today's values, we're talking about more than $1.7 billion annually. But that was just the beginning. He had naval fleets operating in 3 oceans, metal mines that functioned as industrial refineries in the middle of the desert, and absolute control of the largest trade routes on the ancient planet. In this video, I'm going to show you all the numbers. I'm going to show you the logistics and, most importantly, what modern archaeology has discovered hidden in the desert. Physical evidence confirming that this fortune was not a myth, but the greatest economic phenomenon of all antiquity. To understand the magnitude of the damage, we need to speak the language of money. What exactly is a talent of gold? Many people read this word in the Bible and have no idea what it means. Let me explain. In Solomon's time, a talent was not a skill or gift. It was a unit of weight. It weighed about 34 kilograms. 34 kilograms of pure gold per unit. Do the math with me. 666 talents multiplied by 34 kilos equals approximately 22,600 kilos of pure gold per year, just in taxes. Today, a kilo of gold is worth around $75,000 to $80,000. That annual income alone exceeds $1.7 billion. But Solomon reigned for 40 years. If he maintained only that average of tributes, without counting anything else, we're talking about almost $70 billion in gold tolls alone throughout his reign. And that's without counting customs duties, diplomatic gifts, mine profits, and returns from naval expeditions. The Queen of Sheba, for example, arrived in Jerusalem with a caravan described in the Bible as 120 talents of gold, a unique gift from a single visit. That would be more than $300 million in a single diplomatic delivery. When economic historians, specializing in antiquity, attempt to estimate Solomon's total wealth using all these income streams combined, the figures reach numbers exceeding $2 trillion in today's values. This is a speculative estimate because reconstructing an economy from 3,000 years ago is always an exercise with many variables. But even if the reality were half that, it would still be the greatest concentration of personal wealth in human history. But then a question arises. How did a king of a relatively small nation, squeezed between giant empires, manage to accumulate all of this? The answer lies in a place you've probably never heard of, a place called Ophir. The Bible mentions that Solomon's fleet regularly sailed to a place called Ophir and returned laden with gold, silver, precious sandalwood, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. The problem? For centuries, no one has been able to locate Ophir on a map. It has vanished from history as if the address had been deliberately erased. Some archaeologists propose that Ophir was located in present-day Zimbabwe in Africa, where there are ruins of ancient mines of surprising scale. Others argue that it was on the coast of Saudi Arabia, in the region known today as Al-Ula, or even in India, on the coast of Goa. Each theory has its geographical and linguistic arguments. But here comes the part that changes everything, the detail that separates speculation from real proof. In 1946, during archaeological excavations at a site called Tell Qasile, in what is now the city of Tel Aviv, Israel, researchers found something small but explosive. A fragment of pottery with an inscription in ancient Hebrew. When experts deciphered the text, they read the following: "Gold of Ophir for Beth-Horon, 30 shekels." 30 seconds to process what this means. This fragment, now kept in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, is the only extra-biblical mention of the name Ophir ever found. It proves that Ophir was not a symbolic or poetic name invented by the biblical writer. It was a real place, so real that it appeared in everyday commercial documents, on shipping labels, like a modern tracking code on an Amazon box. Ophir gold was a hallmark. It was such a recognized standard of quality that identifying the metal's origin on the packaging served as a guarantee of authenticity. Solomon wasn't looking for just any gold. He had exclusive access to the best source of gold known in the ancient world. To obtain this gold, Solomon did something no Israelite king had done before. He created a navy from scratch. And to do this, he allied himself with the Phoenicians. Who were the Phoenicians? They were the people who lived on the coast of present-day Lebanon, and they were, without exaggeration, the masters of the Mediterranean Sea during the Iron Age. They built the best ships in the ancient world and knew the routes, winds, and currents like no one else. Solomon realized that the best way to dominate maritime trade was to buy the expertise of the best navigators available. The alliance with King Hiram of Tyre was the most intelligent geopolitical move of the reign. In exchange for cedar wood for the temple and naval technical assistance, Solomon offered wheat, olive oil, and entire cities in northern Israel as payment. It was not a friendly gift. It was a corporate contract with an exchange of strategic assets. Together, they built the so-called Fleet of Tarshish, large vessels that sailed from the port of Ezion-Geber on the Red Sea, located in the region of the present-day Gulf of Aqaba, on the border between Israel and Jordan. From there, the fleets sailed south, passed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the entrance to the Red Sea, and entered the Indian Ocean. The Bible records that these fleets returned every 3 years. Not that the journey lasted 3 consecutive years, but that the expeditions were triennial cycles, departing and returning every 3 years. This indicates roots of a monumental distance for the technology of the time, confirming that Ophir lay far beyond the nearby coastlines. And look what they brought: gold, silver, ivory, and also monkeys and peacocks. Why bring exotic animals? It wasn't the whim of a bored, rich king. It was a high-level political strategy. Each exotic animal displayed at the court of Jerusalem sent a clear message to all visiting ambassadors and kings. My reach extends to places you can't even imagine. I have access to the entire world. It was a way of communicating global power in an era without satellites or social networks. Whoever controlled the exotic controlled the perception of power. Now look at a map of the Middle East. Do you notice anything? Israel is a narrow, unavoidable corridor. It's the only land bridge connecting Egypt and Africa to the north, to Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Asia. Any caravan wishing to move goods between these worlds needed to cross Solomon's territory. He realized this and transformed the country's geographical location into a revenue-generating machine. Any caravan that passed through, carrying spices from India, incense from Arabia, wood from Lebanon, or fabrics from Egypt paid a toll. He didn't need to chase after all the money. Some of the world's money passed through his doorstep, and he charged an entrance fee. But it didn't stop there. Solomon militarized strategic points in the territory to ensure that no one fled the toll. The Bible and archaeology confirm that he rebuilt and fortified 3 cities at key points on trade routes: Megiddo, Hazor, and Gezer. Not coincidentally, these 3 cities were extensively excavated in the 20th century, and in all of them, archaeologists found an identical architectural feature, the so-called Solomonic gates, entrance structures with 6 symmetrical chambers designed with the same construction pattern, which experts attribute to the period of Solomon's reign. Finding the same architectural signature in 3 distant cities at the same time is proof of a centralized government with the capacity for large-scale execution. Besides the tolls, he entered the market for horses and carriages, the most advanced military technology of the time, equivalent to modern tanks. He imported horses from Cilicia in southern present-day Turkey and carriages from Egypt and resold them to neighboring kingdoms at a profit. He was, literally, the biggest arms dealer in the region. All within the law of the time, of course, but with the coldness of a businessman who knows where the money is. But here arises the mystery that keeps historians awake at night. If Solomon amassed all this, where did all the gold go? Why, in 3,000 years of excavations in Jerusalem, haven't we found large gold deposits? At the end of this video, I'll show you the great raid that emptied Israel's coffers, and the archaeological proof of this is still engraved in stone in Egypt today. Before we delve into the absurd engineering of the temple, I need to take a quick break. The goal of this channel is not to talk about wealth as financial self-help, nor is it to preach religion. What I want here is just one thing: to reclaim what was real. We live in a world that processes everything in 15 seconds. And in the midst of that, we forget that entire civilizations built things that science is still trying to explain. If you've made it this far in this video, it's because you're the type of person who isn't satisfied with the superficial version of things. You want the layer beneath, where the real evidence is. If this type of research makes sense to you, I ask one simple thing. Click the follow button now. Not because I need numbers, but because each subscription keeps alive a channel that prioritizes technical rigor over content. Now let's talk about how Solomon spent that money. Because how someone spends their wealth reveals as much as how they accumulate it. Solomon's temple was not a beautiful religious building. It was an engineering project that defies what we imagine to be possible for 950 BC. The Bible describes interior walls covered in pure gold, utensils of solid gold, and columns decorated with cast bronze pomegranates. The structure took 7 years to complete and required the work of 180,000 people at a time, 30,000 working in Lebanon to cut wood, 70,000 carrying materials, and 80,000 cutting stones in the quarries. But the technical detail that really baffles me is this. The book of 1 Kings, chapter 6, verse 7, says that the temple was built with stones that were already cut and finished in the quarry, so that no sound of hammer, axe, or any iron tool was heard during the construction on site. Think about what this means. They were cutting gigantic stone blocks, some weighing tens of tons, with precise joints in quarries that were kilometers away, and then simply assembling them in Jerusalem as if it were a prefabricated puzzle. That's precision industrial logistics in the Iron Age. The prefabrication that we associate with modern construction already existed 3,000 years ago. And it wasn't just the temple. Solomon's palace, called the House of the Forest of Lebanon, took 13 years to complete, almost twice as long as the temple, and featured pure cedar columns, gold shields hanging on the walls, and an ivory throne overlaid with gold, with 6 steps, each step flanked by sculpted lions. Visitors from distant kingdoms arrived in Jerusalem expecting to see the capital of a small kingdom, and left speechless. For a long time, skeptics claimed that the scale of Solomon's wealth was literary exaggeration, until archaeology began to reveal what was hidden beneath the desert sand. The Timnah Valley, in the far south of Israel, near the city of Eilat, hides one of the largest copper mining operations of antiquity. Excavations in the region, especially the research led by archaeologist Erez Ben Yosef of Tel Aviv University throughout the 2010s, revealed something extraordinary. The copper slag found there, the residue from the metal smelting process, dates precisely to the 10th century BC, exactly the period attributed to the reign of Solomon. But what really impressed the researchers wasn't just the date. It was the scale. Timnah wasn't a small, family-run artisanal mine. It was an industrial operation with serial smelting furnaces, forced ventilation infrastructure to raise the temperature of the fire, and evidence of continuous, high-volume production. Chemical analyses of the copper produced there identified the metal's isotopic signature, a kind of chemical fingerprint, and found this same copper in archaeological sites scattered throughout the Mediterranean, from Cyprus to Greece. Solomon didn't just have one mine. He was the supplier of raw materials for the entire world. Copper was the oil of that time. Without it, there were no weapons, tools, construction, or navigation. Whoever controlled the copper controlled the industrial power of an entire civilization. It's worth mentioning that experts still debate whether the Timnah operation was directly controlled by Solomon's government or by allied peoples in the region, such as the Edomites. But regardless of who operated the mine on the ground, archaeological records show that production was part of the economic chain of Israel at the time, and that this metal fueled trade networks that reached far beyond the Middle East. We saw how he earned the money. We saw how he spent it. But now comes the part that nobody really talks about. There was a specific event just 5 years after Solomon's death that wiped all that gold out of Jerusalem. And the proof of this isn't in the Bible. It's forever engraved in a temple in Egypt. I'm going to show you now. 5 years. Solomon died, and 5 years later, Egypt came knocking at the door. Pharaoh Shishak, known in Egyptian records as Shishak I, founder of the 22nd dynasty, launched a military campaign in Canaan that was not aimed at destroying cities, but rather at draining wealth. He was the most sophisticated plunderer of antiquity. The Bible, in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 14, verse 26, is direct. Shishak took all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. The gold plating of the temple, the gold shields of the palace, the sacred utensils, everything was removed, melted down, and carried to Egypt. But here's the part that will leave you speechless. This invasion isn't just a biblical account. It's documented in stone in Egypt. In the Temple of Karnak, in Luxor, there is a monumental relief commissioned by Shishak himself to celebrate his campaign. In this relief, the pharaoh appears holding the heads of conquered enemies, and beside him is an engraved list with the names of more than 150 cities and towns that he sacked in Israel and Judah. Megiddo is there, Gezer is there. The same names that appear in the Bible as strategic centers of Solomon appear on the Pharaoh's trophy list. This is what historians call cross-corroboration, when two independent sources from different cultures confirm the same historical event. Shishak's invasion is one of the biblical events most solidly confirmed by extra-biblical archaeology. Solomon's gold did not disappear. It was transferred. Probably some of the splendor of the great Egyptian monuments of the post-Shishak period was financed with the metal that Solomon's builders had rolled into the walls of the temple in Jerusalem. Wealth is not destroyed. It changes hands. In the end, what was left of Solomon? The trillions became decoration in Egyptian temples. The temple was looted, rebuilt, looted again, and finally destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The fleets rotted at the bottom of the Red Sea. The palace disappeared. No coin bearing Solomon's face has survived. No gold object with his name has been found. All that remained were the words. And the words Solomon left behind are, ironically, a critique of the very wealth he accumulated. In the book of Ecclesiastes, the text says, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." He was the man who tested absolutely everything that money can buy: pleasure, power, construction, knowledge, art, and came to the conclusion that money without purpose is merely chasing after the wind. He built the greatest economic enterprise of antiquity, and the lesson he left was that the greatest asset was not the gold of Ophir. It was the ability to look at the world clearly and understand how things really work. And perhaps that's why, 3,000 years later, we're still here trying to decipher what he did. So, was Solomon the most intelligent man in history, or just the most geographically advantaged? Comment below your answer. Follow the channel so you don't miss the next investigation. See you in the next video.